There are 7 subtle mindset shifts that quietly separate men who build real power and wealth from those who stay stuck, grinding their whole lives. And I'm not saying this to hype you up. I'm saying it because I've seen it play out again and again. If you don't just understand these shifts intellectually, but actually live them, they will change the direction of your life. But I'll be honest with you up front. If you're not already operating at a high level, some of this might irritate you. That's not a problem. That's the signal. A while back, I heard a simple rule about mastering anything. If someone is doing what you want to do, don't copy their surface behavior. Copy 3 things. First, their beliefs, what they assume is possible. Second, their mental order, how they sequence decisions in their mind. And third, their posture, the way they carry themselves under pressure. This video is about the first layer, belief. Because if your beliefs are off, your actions won't matter. And let's be real, if these ideas already fully made sense to you, your results would already reflect that. Growth doesn't come from agreement. Growth comes from friction. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. If he walked into a modern co-working space today, he saw a room full of men staring at laptops, grinding 1-2-hour days, posting motivational quotes between Zoom calls. He wouldn't be confused. He'd be amused. Because he'd instantly recognize something most people refuse to see. They're moving without direction, busy without strategy, exhausted without progress. He saw the same thing in Florence. Men mistaking activity for advancement. The century changed. The mistake didn't. So, if something here challenges you, that's where the work starts. Machiavelli once said, "Men rarely change unless discomfort forces them to, because habit feels safer than truth." But comfort doesn't protect you. It just makes the decline feel smooth. The change starts with how you view yourself. Shift 1. The inversion of identity. This one completely changed how I see life, money, and power. You've probably heard it before. That's the danger. People hear it, repeat it, but never actually change their behavior. The idea is simple. Be, do, have. Most people live it backwards. They think if they have something, then they can do something, and then finally, they'll be someone. But it doesn't work like that. Here's the reality. You cannot do your way into becoming someone you are not. And you cannot have what your identity cannot sustain. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Men tried to take power before becoming the kind of man who could hold it. And it always ended the same way: collapse, betrayal, or loss. Everything in life operates within constraints. Time is a constraint. Energy is a constraint. Space is a constraint. Anything worth becoming takes time. Anything worth building needs space. Anything worth maintaining requires effort. But most men try to rush the process, while refusing to change themselves inside the process. That's the mistake. The people at the top understand something early. Creation comes before possession. Identity comes before reward. Power follows alignment, not urgency. If you feel empty, restless, or stuck, it's usually not because you lack opportunity. It's because you're not creating anything that reflects who you could become. And the moment you decide to build something real, resistance shows up. Problems multiply, friction increases, obstacles appear. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's proof you've stepped into reality. Because everything tends toward chaos. If you leave something alone, it decays. Order requires effort, intention, consistency. Machiavelli said fortune favors the bold. But people always leave out the second part. Only the disciplined survive what comes after. This is where most men quit. They try something for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and when results don't show up, they assume it's not working. What they don't understand is this. In the early stages of anything meaningful, results are invisible. Feedback is delayed. Recognition comes last. I know this because I lived it. There was a period, almost 2 years, where I was building something I believed in, and the world gave me nothing back. No money, no validation, no recognition, just silence. And every morning, I had to make a decision. Do I keep going based on who I'm becoming? Or do I stop because there's no evidence yet? That gap between identity and results is where most people break. Not because they lack talent, but because they don't have patience with themselves. And here's something most people get wrong. When you see someone successful, you assume their money reflects what they're doing right now. It doesn't. Wealth is usually delayed compensation. It's payment for years, sometimes decades of work that didn't pay anything except growth. This is where entitlement quietly kills ambition. People want results early without becoming the person required to sustain them. The men who rise value time more than money. The men who stay stuck obsess over money and waste time without realizing it. That single inversion explains more than talent ever will. Short-term thinking clings to cash. Strategic thinking protects time. And once you really understand this, everything starts to shift. Because after identity comes a harder question. If effort alone isn't enough, then what actually creates results? Before we go deeper, I want you to pause and think about something. Not just hear it, actually sit with it. Ask yourself, what identity have I been performing? And what identity have I been avoiding? There's a gap between those two. And that gap is running your life whether you admit it or not. If you can name it clearly, you can start changing it. And if this kind of thinking feels different, if it's not just motivation, but something sharper, something uncomfortable, then you already know. This isn't about feeling good. This is about seeing clearly. Because in the next part, we're going to break down something even more uncomfortable. Why the hardest workers often earn the least, and why value not effort is the real currency. Shift 2. The value ladder. Once you understand that identity comes first, the next realization hits even harder. And if you've spent your life working hard, this one can feel almost offensive. Effort alone does not determine outcomes. Value does. And value exists in levels. This is where a lot of men lose years, sometimes decades, without even realizing why. Because not all value is created equal. There are different layers to how humans create value, and each layer is rewarded differently. At the lowest level, you have execution. This is where you trade your time, your energy, your physical effort to get a task done. You show up, you work, you repeat. It's honest work. It's necessary work. Society depends on it. But it has a ceiling. No matter how hard you push your body, there are only so many hours in a day, and eventually, your energy runs out. Think about the guy pouring concrete at 6 a.m. Nobody works harder than him, but his income is tied directly to one thing, whether he shows up. If he stops working, the money stops. That's execution. It's respectable, but it's capped. Above that is coordination. This is where you stop doing everything yourself and start organizing people, systems, and processes. Managers operate here. Team leaders operate here. And here's where people start getting uncomfortable. The person coordinating often earns more than the person doing the physical work. Even if the physical work feels harder, that's not unfair. That's leverage. Machiavelli understood this clearly. Power doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the one who directs strength. And I'll be honest, this was hard for me to accept, because I was that guy. Working harder than my manager, earning less. And I told myself the same story most people do. This isn't fair. And it felt true. But it wasn't complete. What I didn't understand was this. I was being paid for output. He was being paid for decisions. And One good decision before lunch could be worth more than my entire week of effort. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me strategic. But even coordination has limits. You can only manage so many people before things get messy. That's why a lot of managers hit a ceiling. They're still too close to the work. The next level is where things really change. Communication. At this level, you're no longer trading time or managing people. You're moving people. With ideas, with words, with influence. You shape perception, you frame reality. And this is where money starts to scale. Think about a deal closing in a boardroom. A few sentences, a conversation, a handshake. And in that moment, more value is created than hundreds of people could produce physically in a year. That's not an exaggeration. That's how real money moves. The person in that room didn't lift anything, but they moved everything. This is why salespeople, negotiators, lawyers, creators, and media personalities can earn more in a year than some people earn in a lifetime. Not because they work harder, but because their decisions and words influence massive outcomes. And above that, there's the highest level. Imagination. This is where systems are created. At this level, you don't just communicate, you design. You don't just influence people, you build the environment they operate in. Every app you use, every platform you scroll, every system you participate in, you're inside someone else's imagination. They created the rules. You're playing the game. Businesses, platforms, movements, financial systems, they all start here. Machiavelli would call this the domain of rulers. The ones who write the rules, instead of following them. Now, here's the problem. Most people never consciously move up these levels. They stay where they started and hope that working harder will somehow compensate for their position. It won't. Wealth is not created at the bottom of the ladder. It's created above it. Moving up requires a new mechanic. Shift 3. The leverage principle. It is easier to make a large amount of money in a short time than it is to make a small amount slowly over a long time. That sounds crazy at first, but think about it. Making small money slowly requires constant effort, constant presence, constant survival. Making large money quickly requires leverage, systems, precision. One path scales exhaustion, the other scales impact. I didn't believe this at first either, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the reason this idea feels unrealistic isn't because it's wrong. It's because accepting it forces responsibility. Because if it's true, then staying small isn't fate. It's a decision. And most people would rather believe the system is rigged than admit they've been playing at the wrong level. Once this clicks, your standards shift. What used to feel like good money starts to feel inefficient. Not because you're greedy, but because you see the trade-offs more clearly. You stop asking, how can I earn more? And you start asking, what deserves my time? That one question filters out most distractions, and this connects to something else that traps people. But leverage demands total focus. Shift 4. The power of concentration. Too many options. Too many paths. Too many shiny opportunities. The problem isn't lack of opportunity. It's lack of commitment. When you chase everything, nothing compounds. The men who rise do something different. They concentrate. They pick a lane that allows leverage, and they stay there long enough for identity and skill to merge. And when that happens, it looks like overnight success. But it's not. It's compressed time. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't consciously choose to move up the value ladder, life will lock you into the level you tolerate. Not because you can't do more, but because you never demanded more from yourself. So I want you to do something honest. Look at the last 12 months of your life. Not what you think you did, what you actually did. Where did your time go? Were you operating at execution, coordination, communication, or something higher? Because your calendar doesn't lie. And the gap between where you think you are and where your time proves you are, that gap is your reality. And if this is starting to shift how you see things, good. Because in the next part, we're going to break something even deeper. A belief that sounds smart, responsible, even logical, but quietly keeps people stuck for years. The idea that things are too expensive, and why that one sentence shuts down more potential than almost anything else. Once you start understanding value and leverage, another belief begins to fall apart. Which brings us to the lie of comfort. Shift 5, capacity over cost. And this one is dangerous, because on the surface, it sounds smart, responsible, even rational. The belief is simple. Things are too expensive. You've probably said it more times than you can count. And every time you say it, you shut something down without realizing it. Here's the truth. Nothing is expensive. Things cost what they cost. The real issue is whether you can afford it at your current level. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly because it's a self-imposed limitation. People frame their constraints as if they come from the outside. The price is too high, the market is too tough, the economy is bad. But most of the time, the cage isn't locked. They're just sitting in it. Because standing up requires becoming someone they haven't become yet. When you say something is too expensive, you make the object the problem. When you say you can't afford it, you make yourself the variable. And that's uncomfortable, because you can't escape yourself. I used to live inside what I now call make-do logic. If something broke, I fixed it. If something was outdated, I patched it. If something was inefficient, I tolerated it. And I told myself I was being smart. But I wasn't building wealth. I was preserving limitation. Cheap car, constant repairs. Cheap tools, wasted hours. Cheap decisions, expensive consequences. At the time, it felt responsible. In reality, I was trading time, the one thing I can't get back, to avoid upgrading my thinking. And that trade never works long term. Some of you already know exactly what I'm talking about. You're sitting there doing the math, trying to figure out if you can afford something that could actually change your situation. A course, a move, an investment, a connection, and at the same time, spending money without thinking on things that change nothing. And deep down, you know it's not really about money. It's about permission. You're waiting for your circumstances to tell you it's okay to level up. But they won't. Circumstances don't promote you. Decisions do. People who operate at a higher level think differently. They don't ask, how can I get this cheaper? They ask, how do I become the kind of person for whom this is normal? That question changes everything. It forces growth. It shifts your priorities, your standards, your behavior, because attention matters more than money. If you focus on cost, you stay small. If you focus on capacity, you expand. And this ties into a pattern you see everywhere. Across business, sports, content, money, everywhere. A small percentage produces the majority of results. A few companies generate most of the revenue. A few creators get most of the attention. A few decisions create most of the outcomes. The rest is noise. This isn't unfair. It's structure. Machiavelli understood this power naturally concentrates. Not because someone designed it that way, but because that's what power does. And here's what makes people uncomfortable. Average behavior scales massively. That's why the middle feels crowded. Everyone is competing for the same space. The same jobs, the same opportunities, the same outcomes. And it feels suffocating. But at the top, it's quiet. There's less competition, less noise, more space. And the only price of entry is this: You have to be willing to be different for longer than feels comfortable. That's it. Most people won't do it. Not because they can't, but because the crowd feels safe and the climb feels lonely. Once you see this clearly, your strategy changes. You stop trying to optimize everything, and instead, you start identifying the small number of actions that actually produce results. Because most of what you're doing isn't wrong. It's just inefficient. When you double down on what matters, momentum shows up fast. And this is why the idea of equal outcomes doesn't hold up in reality. You can't equalize results without equalizing effort, focus, skill, and sacrifice. And even then, the imbalance returns. Because productivity comes first. Income follows. Yet, most will still hesitate. Shift 6. The invisible cost of inaction. The calculation most people never make. They know the cost of action, but they never calculate the cost of inaction. And that's where the real damage happens. Because inaction doesn't send you a bill today. It sends it later. With interest. Opportunities don't come with expiration dates written on them. They show up as conversations, moments, decisions, discomfort. And if you hesitate, they disappear. Machiavelli warned that men don't lose power through attack. They lose it through delay. Through standing still while everything around them moves. The same thing happens in your life. You don't destroy your future dramatically. You postpone it, quietly, until there's nothing left to postpone. I learned this in a moment that stuck with me. I was at a small event, listening to someone who had real results. Not flashy, not famous, but sharp. Afterward, we sat down and talked. For hours. He broke down how his world worked. Deals, leverage, access. And the whole time, part of my mind was doing what most people do, wondering if I belonged there, calculating the gap between his world and mine. When the bill came, he reached for it, and I stopped him, not out of ego, but because I understood something in that moment. If I let him invest in me while I risked nothing, I was signaling exactly who I was. And it wasn't about the money, it was about the message. Was I someone who shows up and takes? Or someone who puts something on the table? Later, he told me that moment determined whether he would ever open doors for me. That's how life tests you. Quietly. No announcement. No warning. And those moments compound. Forward or backward. Because sometimes action costs money, but inaction costs years. Sometimes action costs discomfort, but inaction costs identity. Sometimes action costs risk, but inaction costs access to rooms you'll never enter again. People at the top understand this. They pay for speed, they pay for proximity, they pay for information. Not because they like spending, but because they understand time doesn't come back. Short-term thinking saves money and wastes years. Strategic thinking spends money to compress time. Once you stop hesitating, everything becomes a tool. Shift 7. Strategic conversion. Every time you spend money, ask a different question. Not, how do I reduce this? But, how do I turn this into leverage? How do I make this work for me? Most people never ask that. So they never see the answers. You don't need to reinvent your life to do this. Just look at what you're already doing differently. Where you live, what you enjoy, what you're learning, who you talk to. Most people consume. Strategic people convert. Let me give you an example. Someone spends money on food every month. Most people just eat. One person decides to turn those meals into connections. Now, every dinner becomes a meeting. Every restaurant becomes a room of opportunity. Same money. Completely different outcome. That's leverage. That's conversion. And this is why some people build empires from ordinary habits. Not because they're more talented, but because they ask better questions. Consistently. Now here's the part most people struggle with. You won't always get answers immediately. Sometimes you ask a better question, and nothing happens. For weeks, months. And that silence makes people uncomfortable. They assume it means stop. But it doesn't. It means think deeper. Powerful people can sit in uncertainty without running back to comfort. They let ideas mature. Machiavelli said, "Men don't fail because opportunity disappears. They fail because they abandon themselves the moment clarity disappears." And that still applies today. If you never ask better questions, life answers for you. And its answers are harsh. You stay the same. You repeat the same year. You call it stability. And eventually, you realize you didn't choose your life. You drifted into it. That's how most people lose. Not through disaster, through neglect. Let me be clear. None of this guarantees millions. That's not the point. The real outcome is more dangerous than that. Agency, direction, momentum, the ability to move forward on your terms. Most people never even get that. Not because it's unavailable, but because they won't act until they feel ready. And that moment rarely comes. Here's the truth. Inaction feels cheap today because it charges you later in lost time, lost confidence, lost opportunities. And one day, you feel it. When you see someone living a life you once told yourself you'd have. That's the bill. And it always comes. Delay is quiet. It feels responsible. But it's one of the most reliable paths to regret. So here's where I leave you. Not with motivation. Not with comfort. But with a question. Where in your life are you carefully calculating the cost of moving forward, while ignoring what staying the same is already costing you? You don't need a long answer. Just one thing. One decision. One door. One move. Because that level of honesty alone is already more than most people are willing to face. And in the end, the men who rise aren't smarter. They aren't luckier. They just act, while everyone else is still waiting to feel ready. If this shifted the way you see yourself even a little, then don't stop here. Because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, then subscribe. Because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.